YouTube, welcome to Zen Magic, and welcome to Fundamentals Episode 2. Today we're going to be looking at how to hold the cards and just the basics on how to handle them. This should have been Episode 1, but I had other plans, so this is just the basics on how to hold them. We're going to talk about fanning, all that good stuff. To start off, this is my Outlaws deck by Brian Brushwood. If you're not familiar with his channel, go check out Scam School. It's a great channel. But this isn't a deck review. If you guys want me to do deck reviews, comment below. I will start doing deck reviews. I've got about 50 decks that we could talk about. But this isn't deck review. This is how to hold the cards, the basics. So, let's start off with the different grips. So, in cardistry, there are 3 basic grips and how you hold the cards. The first one we're going to talk about is called Mechanic's Grip, also called Dealer's Grip. But I'm going to refer to it as Mechanic's Grip in this show, just because that's how I was taught. It's called Mechanic's Grip is just the standard way to hold the deck in your hand. From this position, you can spread the cards out, you can transfer into other grips and start fanning, deal off cards. This is also called Dealer's Grip because you deal from this position. Basically, to hold it in Mechanic's Grip, you just have exactly as I'm showing right here. In fact, I'm actually going to start demonstrating from right here. You have 3 fingers along the side, and then your index finger on top, and then your thumb's just kind of right here, or it could be out to the side, I guess. From here, you can push off cards, spread through the cards, and transfer into other grips. But this is Mechanic's Grip. It's just the standard way to hold a deck of cards. So I'll give you a moment to see that position. 3 fingers down the side, index finger on top, thumb's just kind of right here. Okay, now let's talk about the second grip, which is called Biddle Grip. Biddle Grip is just holding the cards in this position. You're just holding the cards in like this little cradle. From here you can transfer into cuts, other grips. It's another way to hold the cards, and we'll talk about its uses. There's some tricks that require this position. And when we get to shuffles and cuts, which is going to be next week, this position will be used a lot. But this is called Biddle Grip. Now let's talk, I'll just give you a minute to see that. You just holding the cards in a cradle like this. That's it. Now let's talk about the final one, which is called Straddle Grip. Straddle Grip, or the way I learned it, it was called Raised Mechanic's Grip, but that doesn't sound right. Straddle Grip, from here you can do like one-handed cuts. Straddle Grip is just this raised position. So it's like Biddle Grip, but you're holding it the other way, so it's kind of elevated. So you have 2 fingers right here, your pinky and index finger right here, and then your thumb across the top. There's also a vertical kind of version of this, and we'll talk about that in the second part. So we talked about the 3 grips: Mechanic's Grip, Biddle Grip, and Straddle Grip. Alright, I'll give you a moment to see the Straddle Grip. That's Straddle Grip. This is Biddle Grip. And this is Mechanic's Grip. Alright, now let's get into fanning. Okay, so now let's talk about fanning. We're going to talk about 3 fans. 2 of them are basic, and then the last one's a little bit more intermediate. But you'll be able to do it. And guys, I apologize, I'm going kind of fast with these tutorials. There are people that teach these way better than me. I apologize if my videos are too fast. I hope you can still follow them. Well, let's get into fanning. So, we're going to talk about the first 2 basic ones. We're going to talk about the thumb fan and the one-handed fan. So, fanning works best with new decks, but it can be done with really any deck. Now, the basic one, the first one we're going to talk about is called the thumb fan. And again, there are people that teach this way better than me. But you're going to start off by holding the cards like this. Oh, actually, first of all, it looks like this. Alright, and then we'll kind of get into the closer of how you close the fan. But it just looks like that. So you want to hold it in this position. Alright, you have your thumb across the bottom. And then on the back you have your index finger riding along the back. And then this middle finger is down here. And it's contacting the corner of the cards. Notice how this part's open. And then from there your thumb is just going to move the cards. Now notice how you start here and you end with your thumb sliding along the cards. So you basically have to slowly angle your thumb out. You basically want to get the cards moving and then move your thumb out of the way. And then the friction will just kind of move the cards all on their own. The amount of pressure that you apply depends on a couple of different things. It's different for every deck. If you squeeze too hard, it'll turn out differently than if you're squeezing very lightly. It depends on the condition of the cards and the type of stock the cards are made out of. You can still fan those cheap laminated cards. You just have to apply a different amount of pressure. But again, you hold it like this. And now here's the technique to fanning. You grab it with your thumb along the side. And I'm trying to explain this as best I can. It's mostly just a gravity thing. Like, not really, you don't just let them fall. But your thumb isn't pushing the cards. It's dragging them. And then the friction from the treatment of the cards basically pulls them all into this nice fan evenly. Again, it depends on the pressure. And you'll just have to experiment with how hard you grip the cards. Sometimes you have to press really hard. Sometimes you press really lightly. So, you're in this position, and then your thumb is just going to do that motion. It's hard to do in slow motion. If you do it in slow motion, it does this. So, I'd recommend learning it like this in slow motion. But once you get the idea of how your thumb slowly changes its angle, it'll turn out better when you do it fast. The more consistent you are in the movement, the better the fan turns out. So now let's talk about one that's a little bit easier. Again, I apologize, that's kind of a fast tutorial. You can always go back and see that again, and there's better tutorials all over. But let's talk about the closer real quick. So the closer, your fingers are just pulling the cards in like that. It's kind of hard to demonstrate from this angle, but I'll try. Let's see. So your fingers are just pulling the cards in like that. That's the motion you're doing. Well, the way I do it, at least, my wrist is kind of flicking inward, and then gravity kind of takes over with that. And your fingers are just on the bottom guiding it. They're just pulling it in like that. Try to demonstrate from this angle. I'm going to change the angle real quick. Okay, so here's a better angle. All that's happening is your fingers are just pulling the cards in like this. And you kind of have this like flicking motion with your wrist. And then your fingers just guide it inwards. So your fingers are pulling them in and then you square it up into this mechanics grip. So again, your fingers just pull it inward. It kind of does this all on its own, again, because of the friction. So you just flick the wrist and then your fingers guide it in. And it kind of, remember to release the pressure. So you're gripping it, you want to release that pressure so that they fall into line. So that's, I hope that's a better angle. Now let's talk about the one-handed fan. Okay, so the one-handed fan is one of my favorites. And I hope that video kind of explained it. These are just things that you'll have to practice. As with everything, you just need to keep practicing these and you'll eventually get it. But let's talk about the one-handed fan, which looks like this. It can be done with a full packet, but we're just going to do it with half the packet. And if you practice it, you can actually do it with both hands to have this display. But let's talk about how to pull it off, and I'm going to change the angle again. So, you want to hold the cards in this vertical Biddle Grip that we talked about. And now you want your pinky and your index finger to squeeze the cards so that your thumb can let go. That's what you want. So your thumb should be able to let go, and you should still be holding it like this. And then you bring these fingers in, which will flip the deck like this. Your thumb is going to contact this corner, and then you're going to let go with these fingers and then make a fist. So without the cards, your hand is in this position. That's how it looked like without the cards. So you're here, you let go, you bring these in, and then your thumb just slides across till you have this fist. So you grab here, your thumb drags the cards out, and your index finger drags them this way into this display. It can be done with a full deck. It doesn't get as big, but it can be done with a full deck. But I recommend just practicing with half the cards. So you squeeze so that you can let go with your thumb. You pull these two fingers inward, which flips the deck. You contact the corner, so now you're just gripping it like this, alright? Your pinky and index I'm being used. Your thumb is going to go this way, while your index finger comes and pulls this way, and then you just make a fist. So again, just like with the other fan, this only works when it's at full speed. When you go slowly, it doesn't really turn out well. But in slow motion, you pull it this way, while your index finger pulls it that way. And then you have this display. And you keep practicing that, and then you can do it in two hands. Just like that. So I hope these tutorials were good at explaining it. There's other tutorials online that teach it better than this, but I hope these were good enough. Just keep practicing them and you'll eventually get it. And now I want to actually talk about one more. This is a little bit more intermediate, and it does require something we haven't actually talked about yet. Next week we'll talk about when we get into shuffles and cuts, we'll talk about something called a Faro Shuffle. That's Faro spelled with an S, not a PH. And all it is you just forcing the cards to weave together. And then you just do a normal fan, but your thumb is dragging from this intersection. So you have this display of the card. You're just weaving the cards together and then doing a normal fan. And then you can get a display that looks like that. So that's the one-handed fan. Again, Faro Shuffle and all the other shuffles and cuts that I briefly talked about in this, that'll be in our next video where we talk about how to do that. Really quickly, spreading the cards just starts from mechanic script. Then you push the cards over, you grab them in the hand, and you just keep pushing cards over. They kind of support themselves, really. You don't need any fingers on the bottom. They're kind of self-supporting at this point. You see I don't have any fingers in the middle holding it together. That's just kind of spreading them. There's more advanced ones where you get into like this S shape. This is just how you spread the cards out for someone to pick one. And that's just the basics. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope my explanations were good. Next week, shuffles and cuts. Until then, remember we perform to amaze. See you next week.